Hi everyone and welcome along. Today we're going to paint a Clematis climbing a trellis. You don't want to know how many times I got that wrong. Anyway, grab your paints and let's get started.
It was 5.
I've begun this by prepping the page with a grid of a trellis, and the way I've done that is just by using this set square, lining it up across the bottom of the page and just moving it, drawing a pencil line, moving it along, making sure that always stays the same, draw a pencil line, keeping it sort of consistent, and then just doing it back the other side until you're left with a nice area of trellis. And I was thinking you can do this a few ways. Today I'm going to do it that I actually paint in the trellis first, and I'm going to paint the whole thing, but I'm going to do it really, really dilute in yellow ochre. So I've got a size 2/10 brush here, and what I'm going to do is with a very diluted yellow ochre, I'm going to choose that I'm going to go on the sort of underside of the pencil line. I think that's always quite helpful. Then you've got one very straight line to reference, and I'm just going to paint in the area of trellis that I want. Because that's the other thing, when you're drawing it in pencil, you also might end up with a slightly strange shape, but now you have the paint lines, I could sort of extend that up a little bit. I've got a good reference for it, so I'm just going to paint in very diluted yellow ochre the whole trellis, and then we can start painting our clematis. And then once that whole row is done, just turn it around and start on the other angle, just making sure to keep the colour nice and diluted. And if you've chosen to go on the underside of the pencil line on one side, then do that for the other one as well, and you'll be left with lovely trellis formations. Once that's dry, give it a rub out with some pencil, and then we've got a gorgeous trellis ready for painting. And now it's time to have a bit of fun. So I've mixed up a lovely sort of bluey purple tone with some cobalt blue deep, a little bit of French ultramarine blue, and permanent rose. I've also got the cadmium yellow ready, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I've got a size 0 brush, and I'm going to begin with quite a dilute amount of colour, and I'm just going to start placing in some clematis flowers. Now if you want, you're very welcome to give yourself a helping hand by drawing in a pencil circle like that, just to give yourself a area where you can anchor the petals. If you want to do it in 2 brush strokes, that's fine, or you can do it in 1, but sometimes it's nice to have a second go to just tidy it up a little bit. Now I'm doing this nice and dilute, as you can see. And I am now going to clean my brush off, make sure it's nice and clean. Get a little bit of cadmium yellow. Got to be very careful not to get these colours too sort of muddied with each other, but I just want to place a dab in the centre. That was 3 dabs of paint. And then, whilst that is drying, I will just take a little bit of more concentrated colour and just add in just the littlest bit of a tip of colour. It'll blend in places, other places it'll just add a bit of an outline like that, but essentially that's going to leave us with a really nice clematis flower base. So I'm now going to paint in a whole load of those flowers, and then we'll be joining them up with leaves and stems. Now we've got all these lovely flowers, but now what I've got is I've got a few extra circles, but they're actually ovals if you look more closely, because I'm going to paint some flowers that are slightly on an angle. So I've got my smaller brush, my 4/10, and I'm going to paint in petals that are just a bit more squashed from the front. From the side they're fairly full length, and then just at the back just making them really quite small. And then we can do the rest of the process if we want to add the little blue tips. Cleaning that brush off each time because we're using really contrasting colours here. So I can just place in these extra flowers that are just going to give the piece a bit more interest by having flowers facing off in different angles. So just remember to keep your paint nice and sort of fairly dilute, so that then when we get these little tips, they look really cool and they have somewhere to go, and also because we add in this dab of yellow. Right, I'm happy with how many flowers I've got here, and I've just added burnt sienna, the brown, into my sort of bluey reddy mix because I want to get a deep dark colour for the stems, for the branches of the clematis, and this is where the rigger brush is absolutely perfect, because the long slender bristles, just get them nicely coated, are going to allow us to paint gorgeous fine lines with an amazing level of control. I just love it. I love this brush so much. It's a one that is relatively new in my kit, but I do actually sell it now because I just think anyone who's doing my tutorials will benefit massively from it. So yeah, if you're interested in buying this or the other brushes, you can get the set that I've curated. They're Pro Art Masterstroke brushes. I've put together a set that I think features all the sizes that are just really fantastic. In my website shop and on Etsy as well. We ship globally. We have been having a bit of trouble shipping to Europe, but I'm informed that things are looking up a little bit, so I'm happy about that. So I'm just going to add extra sort of branches and stems just to sort of even the piece out a bit. Might have a few more branches coming up from underneath. But yeah, how wonderful is that? How effortless was it? Not every flower's been connected up just yet. I might do a few branches that sort of come over. But that is just a wonder brush, it really is. And now it's time to paint in some leaves. So I'm going to take my sap green. My sap green is a Winsor & Newton Professional brand. It is a little bit bluey, and I want to make it even more blue, so I'm adding in some Prussian blue here. So yeah, if you want to get more blue tones in your green, just try one of your blues to see how you go. And now I think I'll use the, what have we got here? The size 0 looks quite nice, should be good. And we're going to paint in lots of lovely leaves, and at this scale most of those leaves can just be painted in a single stroke, just really utilising the fine tip of your brush and the rounded sort of belly of the brush, the thickness of the bristles that you can just squish down. And if you need to neaten it up a little bit, but I quite like those sort of slightly raw edges you get on the leaves. And if you want a bit more control, you can always go down a size. But the only thing, if you go for smaller brushes, it often means that you will struggle to sort of cover quite so much thickness with the brush, you won't get such broad leaves, so you might end up doing 2 brush strokes like that. But sometimes that's a good thing, it just makes you feel like you've got a bit more control. Having added in the leaves, I've also placed a few just sort of ones that are just sort of floating about that I want to add in extra little branches. And you also do get just a little bit of a sort of twisty curl going on every now and then of a new little branch just growing. So when you're adding in your leaves, think about the composition as a whole, the shaping on the page. I mean, I added in these leaves that aren't anywhere near a branch, but I can add those in now. And that's looking really lovely. So the last things to do are a little bit more detail on the actual flowers themselves, because we sort of left them with that yellow centre. I do need to mix up just a bit more of the bluey pinky purple colour. And I think what I'm going to do, just with my 4/10 brush, is I'm going to use the pencil circles that I drew in initially as a guide to just put in a little halo of, like a scruffy halo of dots, to create the sort of filaments and anthers in the centre of the flower. And of course, even with the flowers from the side, it's also going to follow the pencil oval. So the last thing I'm doing is just taking one last look at the trellis itself. I've got some dilute burnt sienna, and I'm just sort of making a decision that one side is going to be on top of the other, of course, so I can do a strong line, a continual line on one side. And yeah, I'm just sort of, like I say, I'm painting it in a very dilute manner, but also just trying not to disturb the paintings that I've done over the top too much. I mean, you don't have to do this. It's sort of down to you really, whether you fancy a bit of it. I just think as a whole it makes the piece just pop off the page just that little bit more. Especially if you painted it very, very dilute the first time round. I probably wouldn't want to do this with any other brush than the rigger, because it's just allowing me to do it quite quickly, and I'm just sort of using it until the brush is almost working like a dry brush, so I've got hardly any colour on it in the first place, and then just brushing it back and forth, and it's just giving it a little bit more interest. So the finishing touches, just popping in a tiny bit of the brown just wherever you think needs it, really. Putting in those little bits just helps give the sense that those bits are underneath. And there we have a lovely miniature clematis climbing a trellis. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one. I want to say a massive thank you to my patrons for their support, because that support enables us to keep creating videos like these that everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and comment below to let me know how you got on with that one. And if you never want to miss another video, just hit the subscribe button and that little notification bell next to it. Okay, until next time, bye!